Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diogo. I'm here with Euclides and Raul, and we are very excited to present you grizlr. Grizlr is the Sports Fanatics homepage. 54 visits a month. This is how much percentage of our users currently visit our site. This is, if you think about it, almost twice a day. Can you remember of that many sites you actually visit twice a day? Probably not. So why on earth would someone visit our site twice a day? Before we see why, let's see who these people are. These people are just people like myself. We are sports fanatics. For us, our team plays an important role in our lives. It's part of our identity. It can even affect our state of mind. So for us to be completely updated about our team is almost like an addiction. So how do we go about it? Let's take an example of a Real Madrid fan. Every day in the morning, he goes to the internet and he starts looking for all the news on Real Madrid. The problem is that he has to go into a lot of sites like AS.com, Marca.com, RealMadrid.com, then he has to go to the blogs, he goes to the forums. You can imagine how much time this takes. And on top of that, he has to look for the relevant information for him. And what's the relevant information for him? It's not just the hard news and facts. He wants to read things that show his point of view, that Real Madrid lost, not because Mourinho did an error, but because the referee didn't say that Messi was offside. That's what he wants to read. So going through all this takes a lot of time, and it can be very painful. This is where grizlr comes along. Grizlr goes through all this media and selects the relevant information for the fan and puts it all in a team page. Not only the news, but the videos, the scores, the schedule, all the relevant content that the fan is looking for. How does it do it? It organizes all the information. For example, as you can see, all the articles similar are clustered so that the user can choose the source he actually reads from, and then it ranks them. And this is where it gets very interesting. How does grizlr ranks this content? It's based on relevance, but not the traditional way we are used to look at relevance, because it's kind of manipulated to be team biased. Let's take an example. There's a Real Madrid-Barcelona game, and on the next game, let's suppose that El Mundo Deportivo, which is the biggest sports newspaper in Catalonia, writes, using the traditional metrics, a very relevant article on Real Madrid. What happens? It won't show up in the Real Madrid team page because our algorithm is team biased. So he knows that a Real Madrid fan doesn't want to read an article from El Mundo Deportivo. In a nutshell, it's all the information in one page. The algorithm organizes by relevance, but a biased relevance, which gives the user a very fast and clean user experience. This is why those people keep coming back to our site. So, let's see who are the competitors of grizlr. We have the content editors, just like ESPN. The problem with those is just one source. The user, the fan, he wants to see a lot of sources. And he wants to see biased content, not just neutral, hard facts. Another group of competitors are the news aggregators, like Google News. The problem for a fan, and if you know any fans, if you're a fan yourself, you probably never use Google News to look for your team's sports news. Why? Because just give you news. You don't want just news. You want the videos, you want the schedules, you want the results, and you want, again, biased information. Actually, our biggest competitor are the blog networks, because they are very emotional also. So, how do we differentiate from them? Besides giving access to this biased and user-generated content, we also give access to the mainstream and long-tail content.
Okay, so we've seen there is potential for differentiation. Let's understand how big is this market. First of all, we estimated this niche market to have around 160 million uniques a month. This is currently growing at an 8% growth rate. This means around 1.5 billion page views a month. In dollar terms, we're talking about something on 130 million US dollars. This is our niche market, which we really believe we can grab a substantial market share in this. So how do we make money? Well, our business model is based on advertising and commissioning. First, we'll have sponsored links. These sponsored links are cleaner and perform better. These are fully customized and integrated in the news feed. Secondly, we'll have affiliate ads with online betting, tickets for the next match, and merchandising sale. This is a very simple but very efficient business model. Based on this, we actually run our 5-year projection for our cash flows. First of all, first comment is the growth in the free cash flows is intimately related with the growth in the user base. We estimate our break-even to be reached by July 2013 and our payback by July 2014. This means a 54% IRR. But we do understand that we have a challenge. Our key challenge here is, as many other businesses, web internet businesses, is user acquisition. How is our go-to-market strategy? Well, we are based in 3 main pillars. First of all, we will have online advertising. We have run, and we've been gathering a lot of information. We've tested different ad campaigns on Facebook and Google, and our strategy is really to collect the information, analyze it, and keep going from that. Secondly, we'll have community managers. These guys are important not only for improving our algorithm, which has our human bias, but also to actually directly relate with our potential users. So using a lot our social media. Finally, we'll have social features. These are basically fantasy gaming, fantasy leagues, which basically our users can interact among themselves and bring in more users to our webpage. So, how are we going to implement this project? Well, we have a very clear stage phase approach. We are currently in phase 0, and we are on target to achieve our first milestone, which is 5,000 users by the end of this year. We have now, at the moment, a fully workable site. The news are there, the videos features are there, and our aim is really to go from next year to expand as much quickly as possible in terms of geography. For this reason, we're aiming to raise 300,000 US dollars by the end of this year. So, what are the next stages? Phase 1, first quarter of 2011. We introduce the other top 4 US sports. Secondly, phase 2, for quarter 2 and 3 of 2011, we aim to enter the European football market. Finally, phase 3, we aim to enter the Latin American football market. This geographical expansion will be linked with some product development. We will be introducing different features, such as social and mobile applications, for iPad, for instance. We will be introducing various features that are relevant for the user, such as search and betting aggregators and gaming features. By the end of next year, our goal is to have 0.5% of market share. Our aim is by year 5 to grab a 15% market share. For this reason, we believe we have to raise a further second round of 2.3 million US dollars. This is mainly to support user acquisition. So, who is the team behind this? First of all, we have Raul Caprian. He's our techie guy. He has over 8 years of experience in engineering, 4 of them at Microsoft and 4 of them at various startups in Silicon Valley. One of the most important experiences that he actually has was that he was responsible at a social network called tag.com to raise the number of registered users from 5 million to 70 million. Secondly, we have our sports guy, Diogo. He played over 20 years at the highest level in rugby, and furthermore, he combines this experience with 5 years in consumer marketing experience. Finally, me. I have a background in finance, but my real passion is clearly entrepreneurship. I've already started a company called Go-Kart Tours Portugal. A few years ago, we reached break-even, still running, it's profitable. and we'll see. So what is the key takeaway of this presentation? The key messages that I want to pass to you. grizlr is online. We have gathered very positive feedback from our users, and our aim is really to revolutionize the way consumers, the way fanatics consume online media. We are starting with sports because it's really our passion, but our aim is to expand this technology to many more areas. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I think a couple of you are Portuguese, so congratulations on the game yesterday. And the question is, how easy is it to move this technology to other areas like finance, entertainment, and how does it, what impact does it have on costs?
Oh yeah, so I think the key for that is it's relatively easy because we just have to configure what sources we want to include, and then we have kind of a control panel for our community managers to manipulate it and do the fine-tuning. So the cost is relatively easy, but the reason we don't want to do that now is because we want to develop the algorithm and technology further and really prove ourselves in one vertical. And then once we prove ourselves, it makes sense to see how we want to monetize it further.
Over here.
May I ask on the structure of working capital? You're a new company, let's assume that the advertisers will pay you in 45 days. You need to pay your salaries at the end of the month. Is there any risk that this astonishing growth rate will take you to a sudden death?
Well, I'm very happy to take you over the financials more in detail. We've actually, I believe, we've been quite conservative in terms of the costs. The way we actually forecasted our financials was assuming no revenues until the end of next year, and from then on, following a pattern that many similar web startup companies have dealt with. We understood that the cost, our drivers of cost, is mainly user acquisition, so a lot of spending in terms of marketing, and also in terms of personal. The personal, we have huge costs related with community managers, but these are the guys that will bring in users and therefore, we believe, revenues. In terms of Facebook, of advertising, I mean, given our experience at the moment, the campaigns that we have already had, I believe we've been quite conservative. We have estimated $8 of cost of acquisition of one user, and so far we've actually tested, and our cost of acquisition is significantly lower. Really significantly low.
But so the question was on working capital to sales, which is do you need some capex in working capital? And if so, how would you finance this increase in working capital going forward?
Well, in terms of working capital, let me go here. I mean, basically, we have, I only have here the P&L account, but the costs, the working capital, means the money that is coming in, and we believe that we're not having any problem because our advertisements and our commissions will pay us upfront, okay? And then we like the commissioning is basically like, okay, there is a guy that starts a program in Bet and Win, basically we receive the $75. So we aim to mitigate that risk through that. Okay. What's good?
I have a couple of questions. I mean, one, I don't really understand when you say, 8 users. What is a user, in the first place? I mean, what do you define by user? And secondly, I have an issue about traffic. I mean, I think there's, I think social media obviously is getting more and more important. But the reality is most of the successful sites today are successful because a lot of the traffic comes through Google. The issue is websites which are basically aggregators like like the one which you're now proposing, have a high risk of being banned by Google and actually not getting much Google traffic at all. Which means that basically traffic would have to come either through paid ads, which is very expensive, or through Facebook or community management, which again is very labor intensive and not easy if you consider that you're doing loads of teams. I mean really a huge structure of community manager. It doesn't seem frankly inside the financials here I don't really see that. So again, two questions. What it means, what is this user? What is a user? And two is how you think to what do you think you're going to do with the traffic, or how you're going to get free traffic if you have an issue with Google?
Okay, so the user question is a great question. When we put up the number 54 times a month, what we were talking about there was what we call addicts. These are people who we've defined that visit the site at least 15 times a month, 15. And so our goal when we talk about users is we're really focused on getting more addicts. That's why the cost is fairly high. But when we're talking about our total number of users, obviously we're looking at monthly uniques and stuff like that. But that's the discrepancy there. The other question I didn't quite understand, because I worked for example, last year I worked for a price comparison site, which was much like an aggregator. And there, most of our traffic came from Google. And right now, we're currently ranking in Google. And we also have a strategy to expand our presence in SEO to get more free traffic. But I think the most important thing is not as much traffic from Google, but from the social features. So things like commenting. Users really want to, our fans really want to talk about the game, what happened yesterday, how they lost. And we want people to make people authenticate through their Facebook and their Twitter, etc., so that when they post their comment, all their friends know, and then they come and they're like, oh, and they start commenting. So a lot of it is more through the social features.
Okay.
Well, let's restrict it first to the judges. Anyone else from the judging panel that wants to?
Sorry, will you feature other sports than football or like team sports?
Yeah.
Tennis, for example, to be very common example.
I think tennis would be one that would be harder to do because it's more on individuals. So our focus is more on team sports, but we do like Euclidean
Car race,
yeah, I think Formula 1 is a good one to have. But yeah, definitely our plan is rapid expansion. We built the prototype based on American football, and it's a prototype and it's something that we can expand easily.
Okay, so with that, thank you. Now we're going to have our last